Today is Shivaji Jayanti, the birth anniversary of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, the founder of the Maratha Empire. Now, a few days ago, NCP-SP chief Sharad Pawar has written to Prime Minister Modi. Mr. Pawar wants 3 statues of Maratha heroes to be erected in New Delhi. Maratha politician has asked for the statues of Peshwa Bajirao I, Mahaji Shinde and Malhar Rao Holkar to be installed at New Delhi's Talkatora Stadium. Now, all 3 leaders are important figures of the Maratha Empire in the 18th century. And joining me now is historian Uday Kulkarni, India's foremost historian on the 18th century Maratha Empire. Uday Kulkarni, welcome to the News9 Plus show.
Thank you.
You know, Maratha history has always been about Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, the founder of the Maratha Empire. For good reason, of course. He founded this empire in the face of unbelievable odds. But, you know, explain to us who these 3 heroes are that Mr. Pawar has written to the Prime Minister and why their statues at Talkatora Stadium. What is the connection of the Maratha heroes with Delhi?
Actually, the aim of Chhatrapati Shivaji always was to capture Delhi. And in fact, there's a letter by his son, Chhatrapati Rajaram, which explicitly says that Delhi is to be captured. Now, in the 18th century, when Chhatrapati Shahu came back, was crowned, his prime minister was Bajirao. And Bajirao became the first visitation of the Marathas to Delhi was in 1719. And Bajirao's father, Balaji Vishwanath, along with the Senapati Khanderao Dabadi and others, came to Delhi along with the Viceroy of the Deccan, Hussain Ali, who was basically wanting to overthrow the emperor at that time. And then the Marathas got the release of the family of their Chhatrapati as well as the sanads of Swarajya, Sardeshmukh and Chauthai in the Deccan. Then in 1730s, the province of Malwa, which is a bridge province between the north and the south, was actually de facto conquered by the Marathas from 1729 onwards. And they wanted a proper transfer, legal transfer of power from the Mughal emperor to the Marathas, which was not coming in spite of repeated requests of this nature. So finally, Bajirao decided that this will not be granted unless I show the emperor Maratha troops at his doorstep.
Right.
Therefore, in 1737, Maratha army of about 25 to 30,000 people went north from Maharashtra, and along with him there were eminent chiefs like Ranoji Shinde, Mallara Holkar, Pilaji Jadhav Rao, and these people, in spite of a 100,000 strong Mughal army to the south of Delhi, found a way through the mountains of Mewat, next to the mountains of Mewat, and reached Delhi on the Ram Navami day of 1737.
Right.
And there, on his arrival, he is said to have roughed up a few pilgrims at the Kalkaji temple. Notice went to the emperor that some Marathas were coming up, which they wouldn't believe, because 100,000 soldiers were already south of the capital.
Right.
So a beggar was sent there, who went there in a spy was sent there, who went there in the guise of a beggar, and he got some arms from the Marathas, which was dry gram and a dry bhakar or a roti, which was conventionally eaten by the Maratha trooper. So when they saw that, they knew the Marathas would come. Bajirao, Mallara Holkar, Ranoji Shinde, that is Mahaji's father actually,
Yes.
they all came to Talkatora.
Right.
1,000 people came out from Delhi to try to defend the capital, and they were cut down by typical Parthian tactics of drawing them out and then turning around and defeating them. So because of that, in fact, this 1737 is very significant because this is the first time since the second battle of Panipat, 1556,
Right.
nearly 180 years, that Delhi actually found an enemy at its doorstep.
Right.
And that is a very significant event, because not only was it a realization of Chhatrapati Shivaji's aim of capturing Delhi, but it was also the first time the Mughals had a knock on their door. And sure enough, Bajirao later on in his letter writes to his brother that if I wished I could have burnt the suburbs of the city, but I consider Delhi to be a Mahasthal.
Right.
And he recognized that the emperor's darbar itself, there were 2 parties, one which was in favor of an alliance with Bajirao and one which is opposed to him. So he writes to his brother that I did not do this burning of the suburbs of the city because I did not want to break the cord of diplomacy. And
Right.
sure enough, in 1741, a peaceful transfer of the province of Malwa was done when it was handed over by Savai Jai Singh at Dholpur to Bajirau's son, Nana Sahib, who was that time the Peshwa.
Right. So
So
it's
that
a very important, chapter in the Maratha history of the Maratha Empire, when they had actually the Mughal rulers had become the vassals of the empire, and you had Maratha armies freely moving up and down, and that is essentially what Mr. Pawar wants to commemorate. And this actually happened outside the present location of the Talkatora Stadium.
That's right. The camp, one of his letters mentions that he camped at the Talkatora Stadium and also at the Jheel. And when the Mughal armies learned that he's there and they turned around and came back to Delhi, he departed from there to Palam. And from Palam, he went down to Kotputli because the intention was to show the emperor that I can reach your capital.
Yes.
So don't take it for granted. And that's why Malwa was eventually legally ceded a few
Right.
years later. to the
Right,
Marathas.
absolutely. I know all of this, Uday Kulkarni, because I've been reading your books. I mean, you're possibly, one of the few people who is so, clinically documented the 18th century, especially the Maratha Empire through your books. But, tell us why history has been so unkind to the Maratha Empire. We see so little mention of all of this in our history textbooks. Is it because we have a very north-centric view of history, the fact that the southern kingdoms, whether it's the Cholas or it's the Marathas, don't find as much importance?
Actually, Indian history, as I always say, has always been multicentric, multifocal, if you want to call it that, and therefore it has to be viewed from multiple focal points. But if you only continue narrating the history of India from a Delhi-centric point of view,
Right.
you're going to get a centralized vision, and the periphery will be ignored, which should not be the case actually, because practically from 1740 onwards, whatever was happening in most parts of Hindustan and the Deccan was dictated from the city of Pune, where
Right.
the capital of the Marathas was, and Satara.
Right, absolutely. It's a metaphor for present day politics as well, Uday Kulkarni. The fact that when the center weakens, you have the coalitions around which become more powerful. And, that seems to be the story of India for centuries. But, coming back to the Marathas, we've seen a lot of demands for statues of the great generals of the Maratha Empire, as Mr. Pawar has made. But, there seems to be a kind of benign neglect of all the monuments and the forts associated with the Maratha Empire, especially all of these figures that we just spoke about. As a historian, give us an idea of, what the government could really do with all of those monuments. And do you believe that that is a bigger and a better tribute to these great figures than just, erecting the statues?
Actually, India has a surfeit of monuments, and the Archaeological Survey of India has got its hands full. I agree with that. However, they have to look a little further from Delhi, which is what they are doing right now.
Right.
The second which I suggest they should do is they should hand it over to private parties, because the number of monuments we have in this country, they cannot be looked after by ASI alone. The Humayun tomb is an example of what can be done if private parties are allowed to come in and take care of these monuments with expertise, with private expertise. And there are plenty of people in the private sector who are willing to do this kind of a job, and corporates are willing to finance it. So I think the Culture Ministry and the ASI have to give a serious thought to how they can better preserve their monuments than what they are doing right now, not just in Delhi and periphery of Delhi, but even other places.
Right, absolutely. More need to involve the private sector more in preserving our monuments, which would actually be the ultimate tribute to all of our heroes, especially the Maratha heroes that we just mentioned. And I was talking to Uday Kulkarni, a foremost expert on Maratha history of the 18th century, particularly of Mahaji Shinde and Bajirao Peshwa I and Malhar Rao Holkar. We look forward to those statues of these great Maratha generals in Delhi, Mr. Uday Kulkarni, but also fact that all of those monuments that they left behind, they need to be preserved and protected. Thank you very much for joining us on the News9 Plus show.
Thank you for having me.